Alrighty, so let's start 16.1. Let's enhance the user experience. We'll do the refresh, but we'll load states actually. We'll end up doing the refresh on the code challenge. So for now, let's just actually load in the AQI. So here is the instructions for this one. So do our normal where we create the folder, set it up for week 15, copy from 15 to into 16. Add this into your integrator CSS file, and these will represent the colors that will give the AQI. And then in the AQI integrator at the top, the very first after the imports and the DOM references, then we'll include this function that will be very handy. And you'll see how this works when we get there, but you can kind of see now, like in case AQI is 1 through 5, and then if it's not outside of that range for some reason, then it would be unknown. But you can see these really nice messages. Air quality considered satisfactory, right? So it just makes us not have to work as much. But in this case, it's returning a label. It's giving that, it's returning an object. And that object is a label, so key value, key value, key value. And so what we can do then is in our code take advantage of that. So, but for this first part, get that done, set that up, and then do your commit, your changes with week 16 setup. Okay? All right, so the work we're about to do is going to happen in the integrator file. No big surprise there, right? So here are 2 comments that you want to add, and I'll show you where to put them, and then we'll get started. So let me bring up my VS Code. I just had the CSS open just to show you. If you didn't have them in there, make sure you have that in your integrator CSS file. So in here, you can see I've already put the function there. And it is good to remind ourselves, actually, where in the carbon footprint, if we hit inspect here, and we look at, okay, this is the row, right? Sorry, this is the heading. This is the row. Okay, so it has a class associated with it. We have a span for the current value right now. It's just ... We still have fetching, which is in this case, in the AQI message. So we're really going to be updating this current AQI value and the AQI status message in this one. Okay. All right, so let's see, we got it here, copy those in. I think I showed you, and if not, I went ahead and stamped out here are the comments in the file, set up the render AQI display, passed in the API data, AQI data. Glad I saw that, no wonder. That would have been a pain in the butt. Anyway, now, down in here, in our try, the last thing we did was we just console logged out that return value from the fetch, okay? And we're going to use that return value, that in our code challenge. But what we're going to do is build things around it, and then I'll give you a code challenge related to that and the refresh button. Okay, so if you didn't already, make sure you coded up that function. Okay, so then what we're going to do here is we're just going to call that function. Okay. So in this case, it would be, I even forgot the name and I just saw it. Render AQI display. I should have remembered that. Okay, so now we do need to pass it the AQI data. Now we could change this and just say data, but it's still AQI data. We're not going to use this particular function for anything other than that, although when you're doing your own projects, you might, right, in that case. So we're just going to call it. So now when we're calling it and we're inside of here, right, what we're going to do for the first part is actually just set up a variable called AQI index. And we're going to hard code this for now. We're just going to say 1. Okay, you can kind of see if you think, you can just see what I'm actually going to go with the challenge later. Okay, so first we set that value, and we're doing that so we can actually then test these. So now what we want to do is we just want to say constant quality. Okay, So that quality of the error, right, the AQI quality is going to come from calling this, right? In this case, we're going to call the, matter of fact, I'm going to lower this a little bit so I can kind of see more code. There we go. So I'm going to say get AQI quality, and then we're going to pass in an AQI index, okay? So when we do that, right now it's 1. It's going to hit this first case, and it's going to return this object, and it's going to store it in quality, which is great because that gives us both the label and, in this case, the style and the description that we can work off of. So that's awesome. So now let's use it. Let's actually say current AQI value span, which, by the way, if you come up here, right, AQI value span is the NOM reference. Is actually, sorry, in this case, we're going to do this, which is text content is going to be equal to, and let's set up a template string. And let's say inject some variables here. We're going to end up injecting, and the reason we're doing the parentheses and then injecting here is just to give that some context, but it's not for calling functions, just FYI. So AQI index, okay, so we're saying, hey, reference that DOM, it's text content, and then also put the AQI label, okay? Right, so in this case, we're just pass whatever we're hard code passing it for now, right? And grab dynamically from that return object, that label, so that we can output it, okay? Semicolon. So doing that now allows us to actually do something really kind of, I think, cool, which is to say, we can say class list dot add. So what we can do is use this key value, because we know we have classes, to add a class into here. And we can do that by just saying quality dot color. Okay. So you see what we did there? Object, key object, right? Okay, object within, there's a key and a value. Okay, and now we're going to use something that actually is already something we have called extra bold. So it's actually, sorry, a CSS style that we already have called extra bold, right? So let's just do this first and see if this works, see if I have any issues here. Okay, let's actually come over here and actually can already see it worked. Which one in this case would be green. Now, how do I know that? If I dig into here and I look at the, in fact, easier to find sometimes because there's so much code, is you can actually see here that in the class listing there was a value and then it injected the, when we were looking at this earlier, I didn't necessarily point that out, but in this case that span has multiple classes on it. Okay, so we injected through our class list dot add these two to make that color, okay, which is awesome. So that means we could now do something like this and say, hey, what if it's 5? Okay, so 5 is and now you can see what it updated, right? So now we're looking at text purple 600. By the way, these class names are based on Tailwind standards, but I decided not to import Tailwind. I just use their naming standard. Okay, so play around each of them, make sure they all work before we actually do the last part of this, okay? So now what we want is we want under here, right? So if we were to come back here, that status message, right? So now right now it's still saying fetched or fetching location found fetching AQI. So now we actually want to output that longer descriptive message, right? That description here. So what we can do is do AQI status message text content equal quality, that object dot description. Okay. Cool. I think that should work. Oh, and it does. You can already see here. Awesome. So I'm going to go back and now I'm going to do, Okay, so let's do 3, one I hadn't done before. Good. All right, so we can see that calling. And by the way, we could, and it always is good, is to go into our AQI and actually watch that run. All right, we can actually stop it right here. All right, reload it. Now we see we're passing in that big object that we'll talk about in a little bit. Okay, calling the function, found the case of 3, it equals, return that value. Now we have that object. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Okay, so that worked, which is awesome. Okay, so now over here, this then is all the coding we need to do. Oh, I got to give a new update message. You'll see that when I get here. Probably AQI render is actually function, probably what's going to be there. So now what I'm going to do is once you submit that, right, now what we're going to do is do a code challenge to actually have us dig into that object, right, and see if you can figure out how to pull that AQI out of there. How would you do it? This is a good test of, in this case, well, I'll actually save that for the next one. All right, so do your commit message. Your commit message will be AQI render function, and then submit your URL, and then we'll move on to the challenge.